Thank you. I like that song. It's a good
Good.
song. It is, yes. And I just love the fact that you are watching us this morning. This you've invested your time. You could be doing many other things, and we just want to honour your time. We want to honour your involvement in Redgum just by watching, and we want to make that time worthwhile. So, just great to have you here. When I was about 12, 13 years of age, I won a dragster push bike in a colouring in competition on TV. The bike only lasted about a year because we came up with this game, and what we would do, we would I'd ride my bike and I'd get my friends to ride their bike directly at each other, and we called it chicken. And whoever changed direction and didn't keep going straight ahead and crash into the other person, they lost. Well, it's not a smart game, right? But as adults, we play a similar game, but we've made it safe. Every time you jump in a car and go anywhere, we're sort of playing this game, but we've made it safe by sticking these little white lines down the centre of the road and making rules and laws and saying you've got to keep to your own side unless it's safe to overtake. I don't know if you've ever thought like this, but I have. Sometimes I've been driving along a highway and you've got trucks coming past and you think, I'm only a metre, 2 metres away from death if we're on the wrong sides of the roads. And I know it does happen, but we've created this sense of safety by painting little bits of white paint on the road, and it's all staying to where we should stay. And in life, in the relationships that we have with people, there's a place for little white lines. They're called boundaries, and if we can have healthy boundaries, it makes a really big difference in how we do life. Every relationship is designed to have those little white lines in it, and it stops head-on collisions. But more than that, it creates healthy relationships where you are nourished, where you flourish, because we understand there are places we're not meant to go. Every family's different. And if I was sitting down with you right now and we're having coffee, and you're sharing with me about your family, your background, how you grew up, or how your family is operating even now, we would find that the impact of boundaries or the lack of them has had a profound influence on your family. And if you're a young parent, you know that your job as a parent is not to control your kids. In fact, your job as a parent is actually to raise kids into young adults, young people that have self control. Otherwise, you could never let them out of your sight. You don't know what they would do, right? So instead of trying to control our children, to show them how to have self control is one of the greatest gifts you can give as a parent. In fact, great parents really understand the role of boundaries, why they exist, and how to establish them in a home, in a family. I'm not talking about rules. Kids can follow rules, they can understand rules, they can keep the rules, but if they don't understand boundaries, if they have no clue that when they do leave home, it can go horribly wrong. And what is true of families is also true for individuals in God's family, especially if we're going to love one another as Jesus has called us to do that. And to the level that he's done it, he's asking us to do that. Well, how do we do that if we don't understand boundaries? They are so important, just those little dotted white lines that separate and give us space in relationships. And if we can understand that, it's very helpful. But recognizing that some boundaries are actually double white lines, never to be crossed. And even when you think it's safe to do so, if we understand that, it helps protect friendships from being destroyed. It's taken me a long time to fully understand that. Years ago in Bairnsdale, in the youth ministry we're doing here, one of my roles was to help young people that were sort of affected, their life was out of control with drugs, alcohol, whatever it was. And if they were wanting to get into Teen Challenge Rehabilitation Centre, my job was to help them, to assess whether they should get there. And I'll never forget this mum. She came to me and she was desperate. Her 22-year-old daughter had been involved in heroin for a long time, back and forward, in and out of prostitution. And this mum could see her daughter's life being taken, just disappearing away. And she came to me and she was desperate. And out of compassion for the mum, and out of compassion for the daughter, we got the daughter in my office there, and we convinced her that Teen Challenge was the place she should go. She didn't really want to change. She didn't want to go there. She was just coping with life her way, but she wasn't desperate like her mum was. And I found that I was putting more energy into her surviving than she was willing to. But eventually we got her to Teen Challenge. She lasted 2 days and she walked out because I had crossed a little invisible line. I'd stepped into her life and I was trying to put into her life what she wasn't willing to contribute, what she didn't want to give. And it didn't work. And she walked out and she never came back. That's not good. It's a problem that we create when we don't understand boundaries. And when Jesus connects our happiness and our joy to being relationally connected to him and to each other, he spoke about how to do these relationships, and he spoke about laying our life down for someone else. He spoke about how to and why to forgive, but he left it to Paul to talk about boundaries. And what Paul shares is brilliant. If we could grab hold of what Paul tells us, if we can sort of run with that, it would stop most of the conflict that happens in marriages. It would help stop the meltdown between teenagers and their parents, damaged and broken friendships, if we can just get this right. I don't know if you've ever seen a situation where there's a young mum or a young dad, they're out somewhere and their little 5-year-old son Jack is running away from mum. And you hear mum going, "Now Jack, come back, Jack, come back here. Jack, come back. 1, 2, Jack, if you don't come back, you're in trouble. Jack. 1, 2, Jack, if I have to get to 3, you are in strife. Jack, I mean it. Jack, 1, 2, 2.5, 2 3/4. Right? You may have seen that. But what happens if you go from just watching it to stepping in and saying to that young mum or young dad, you're doing it wrong? You're not going to get a great reaction, are you? Because unasked for advice always feels like criticism, because we've stepped over this invisible line that we're not meant to cross. So Paul is going to help us. And I want us to look just this morning at a little thing that Paul shares that makes a big difference if we can get hold of this. It's in Galatians chapter 6, and he begins with this. He says, "Carry each other's burdens. In this way, you'll fulfill the law of Christ." Well, what's the law of Christ? It sounds like more rules to be kept, but it's not. When Jesus commanded us to love one another, that word command literally means authoritative prescription. It's a prescription given by someone that wants to see health in our life, and they have the authority to know what they're talking about. And Paul uses a different Greek word, but it actually means the same thing. Its literal translation, the law of Christ, literally means a prescriptive idea for us to use. So the idea is this, that we carry each other's burdens. Now, I don't like washing my ute. It's a burden to me. And I love what Paul's saying, that other people should carry my burden. This is fantastic. So I'm thinking we might get a little roster going, and once a month people in Redgum can wash my ute. But maybe that's not what Paul's saying at all. because I read past that first little bit and I got to verse 5. And here Paul says this, for each one should carry his own load. Well, if you've ever seen those people that drive down the middle of the road with a little white line marker, and they put new white paint on the line, or if there's a new road built, they put that white line down the road. That's what Paul just did. In fact, Paul just painted 2 double white lines never to cross. He created a boundary between these 2 areas of our lives. But our English doesn't really translate that very powerfully. The difference between a burden we're to carry for each other and a load we're meant to carry ourselves. So what I want to do is go back to the Greek words that Paul used, that it's so much more powerful, they're more descriptive, and I want to show you what that looks like. And so when it says we're to carry each other's burdens, it's the word baros. And I've got a little helper here. So Rachel, can you jump up here? She's got to take her little face mask off and come over here. I want you to pick up, because the word baros literally means a boulder. And so we've got a little boulder down here. So can you... It's not little. So can you have a go at picking that up for me, please? Because see...
The camera to see it?
Yes. So just... Thank you for shifting that. The word baros or boulder is always heavy. It always demands much more than we can cope with. It's a total drain. You've got to pick it up.
Now?
Yes. Ugh. Yep, go on, you can do it. It's heavy, isn't it? I'd love to help you, but we're meant to stay 1.5 metres apart, right? So just for the sake of all the rules, you're going to have to hang on to that. But Paul is saying that the boulders that come into our life, they are things that are sudden. They are not usually the fault of ourselves. They can come from any direction unexpectedly, and they always demand more than we can give. Is that getting heavy?
You demand more.
I'll let you put it down, pretending I'm helping you with it, right? Just down you go. Yep. But it's a boulder. Just stay there. I need you for a moment. A boulder is always extracting more than we can carry ourselves, right? And Paul's saying, help each other with that. But then he goes on, he says, each one should carry his own load. So that means it uses the word fortion, which is a picture of, can you grab that? It's a backpack. And what Paul is saying is that is something, people won't see it at the back of you. Yes, that's better. But a backpack, tell me, is that light?
Yes.
It is light. And the word fortion is describing something that is always light. Thanks, Rachel, that'll do. Well done. It is always light. It is just enough to carry for one day. When a soldier was going on a march, he'd take his fortion, his backpack with him, and it was just enough for one day. And it was never heavy. And another thing about the fortion is that this lightness that we're to carry ourselves, we can't give to someone else. It's not transferable. It can't be passed on. There's another understanding of this word, and it's the picture of a cargo ship, and it has an inventory. It has an invoice of all the things that's carrying. It's not the weight in the hull. It's actually a list. And what Paul is saying is there's a little list that we all have that is just up to us to carry. It's not for anyone else. Now, Jesus, I want you to watch how he uses these 2 words. And it's in Matthew chapter 11. He says this, come to me, all you are weary and burdened. That's the word baros, this heavy weight. And I will give you rest. And then Jesus says this, for my yoke is easy, my burden, my fortion, my backpack is light. And Jesus is showing us there's a difference between boulders and backpacks. How does God take the weight, the heaviness, the burden in our life? Well, he uses other Christians. It's why he's commanded us to love one another, because that's his way of doing this. It's like when Moses has disappeared off into the desert he's made a mess of his life, and God goes and calls him back to lead Israel out of Egypt. And God says to Moses, I've heard the cries of my people, and I'm going to save them. And Moses goes, hey, great God, go God. And God goes, well, actually, Moses, I'm sending you. And God helps to carry the weight, the heaviness that we can't in our life through other Christians. But our backpack's different. That lightness that Jesus wants us to carry, he only gives us enough just for one day. We don't have to carry a whole week ahead of us, just one day. And he gives us his Spirit to strengthen us, to teach us, to guide us how to do this. If you've ever poked around in someone else's backpack and got a very negative reaction, it's because it's a place we're not meant to go. The greatest conflict that Coral and I have experienced in our married life has come through my driving. Coral is naturally cautious. I'm not. And over the years, it's been the most significant area of conflict that we've worked through. And in those times, it's actually been the Holy Spirit working on my backpack, what's in my backpack, and it's not my driving, it's my character. Because why would I want to drive in a way that left my wife feeling nervous and anxious? If I really love her, then I would change so that she could enjoy our trips together. And that's the work of God's Spirit on our backpack. It doesn't need someone else doing it. And Paul doesn't actually even give us a list of all the things that are in our backpacks. He doesn't give us a list of all the things that can go wrong and in life that can be a burden that is too much to carry by ourselves. Because if we can understand the concept, that's enough. We can work out the detail ourselves. I remember we were camping up the top of South Australia. It was really cold at night time we were camping. And I had a friend with us. And I had to get up and go to the toilet during the night. And I can remember him calling out to me in the dark. He says, hey, Lex, can you go for me too? Right? And I never forgot it, because in the years since, there's sometimes we'll be in bed at night, sound asleep, and I'll sort of sense Coral's got up to the toilet, and I'm thinking, oh, I should really go too. And I'm thinking, I wish she could go for me. But see, it's in my backpack. It's something that I'm responsible for. But when I was nursing, we looked after some aged people. Some of them had strokes. Some of them couldn't do much for themselves at all. And some of those people would wet the bed at night time. And in our nursing role, we didn't chastise them or go off at them. We just fixed the problem, because it had moved from something that they were responsible for to now a burden in their life. And some things that are in your backpack at some stage of your life can actually move and become a burden in another part of your life. With the fire recovery that Red Gum's helping with, we've set up an account at Goodman's where people that have lost trees and gardens, they can go in and just buy what they want to and put it on the Red Gum tab of up to $150. And people appreciate that. But if we said to them, you've got to buy just this, and we try to control what they were choosing, that would spoil the whole thing, because that's in their backpack. That's their decision what they want to put into their garden or around their house or whatever they're trying to do. Fruit trees, establish them again. And in church life, anytime someone gets hurt and damaged, it's because a boundary has been crossed. It's someone not understanding that this is in someone's backpack and they start fiddling around with it and it's not where you're meant to go. Or it's because we haven't carried the burden that someone else is carrying that needs our help. Sometimes, sadly, leaders in church life think that it's their job to control people through great demands on people's time and energy, their finances. And sometimes people manipulate and they make people feel guilty for not being part of things, and it's just wrong because it's fiddling around with someone's backpack, and it always devastates and damages people. It's a really terrible thing. And I remember sitting down with the president of the ACC in New South Wales, and was in his office one day with John McMartin, and John said to me, Lex, he says, I never interfere with someone's life. I don't try to tell people how to live their lives. And I thought that was great advice for church leaders. It was an understanding of the difference between backpacks and boulders. One thing that is common to our backpacks is the responsibility of helping people understand how they should treat us. That's our role. When we first shifted from Bairnsdale up to New South Wales, I got invited to be on a board of a very significant and high-profile leader in New South Wales. And just before my first appearance on that board, I was at state conference, and there's about 1,200 delegates, and I saw him getting really stuck into someone, yelling at someone that worked for him. And it was public, in front of everyone, and I was shocked. I'd never seen a church leader just this big outburst upon someone, and it must have been a pattern, because you wouldn't just do that publicly if you haven't done it before. And so the first time that I sat down in his board meeting, I just looked across the table at him and I said to him, I saw what you did at state conference, and I just want you to know that you'll never treat me like that. And he never did. And we have a responsibility of how we allow people to treat us. That's in our backpack. And our words are some of the most primary tools that we use to build these boundaries. Jesus said this in Matthew 5. He said, just say a simple, yes, I will, or no, I won't. Anything beyond this is from the evil one. In other words, anything else, it breaks down the boundaries. It causes confusion. It's unhelpful. It's damaging to you. If you want to know who a safe person is in your life, just say no to them and see how they respond. No help sets the limits of abuse, all kinds of abuse. No is a sentence all in itself. And when Paul is talking about giving financially in the life of a church, in ways that we help people, in ways that we can show love to people, he says this in 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 7. Don't give reluctantly or in response to pressure, to manipulation. We were part of a church in Sydney for a short period of time that wasn't healthy. And I remember about 9 o'clock one night, I got a phone call from one of the leadership team asking if we could give $500 because the church was in strife financially. And they were ringing everyone. And I said, well, I don't have $500. And they said, well, can't you just take it out on your credit card? I've never forgot how wrong that was. And so when we started Red Gum Church, we made a decision that we would not be doing a talking or teaching on giving every week. That wasn't a healthy thing to do, but that people could give what they want to out of love for God, out of a desire to help what we're doing. And the giving in Red Gum, honestly, is amazing. What you are doing is incredible. It's enabling us to do the very things that we're doing and then do them better as we grow. And we don't even take up an offering when we were physically together. We had a little box at the back, the ammo box, and we've shifted that now to Simon's Cafe if anyone wants to call in there and buy a pie and put some money in the box. But Most people give online, and you don't need someone talking to you every week about something you've already decided to do. So I just want to say thank you once again for the generosity of those that are involved in Red Gum in some form. If you can't say no to the internal or the external pressures, the weight of expectation of other people, their wants, it causes you strife. It causes you anxiety. Like, I was listening to the Victorian health minister, and she's been sort of working every day since the 25th of January. In fact, she tweeted that she's been doing that every single day, and she said, if my best is not good enough, then I'm sorry. She held that up as a badge of honour. But I don't think that's wise to keep working day after day. Perhaps it's the expectations, internally or externally, but it's not healthy. It's a healthy place to have boundaries. It's a healthy thing to say, I need a day off. I'll work better if I actually have a day off. Since then, she's actually been demoted. If we can say no, it really helps anxiety go away. And the choices we make, if we make them not to get rid of the pressure, but to establish healthy boundaries, that's a very powerful thing. Because boundaries help define us. They define what is me, and they define what is not me. And God uses boundaries to define himself. And as we increase our capacity to love each other, to love our community, to relationally be connected to Jesus, boundaries play a really big role. But to have healthy boundaries, they have to come out of an understanding of the difference between boulders and backpacks, between the things that crush and pull us down that we need others to help us with, and the areas that we, just ourselves, are responsible for. And God can show us that. He can show us that. So let's pray. God, I thank you for everyone that's hearing your truth. This is not something that Lex has made up. This is something that you put in your word to help us understand that there is a line between the things that come and they're too heavy for us to handle and the things that are our responsibility. And I pray that you'd show us by your Spirit what those things are. And then create healthy boundaries to make that work. Thank you for that. Thank you for what that does when we do that. It's a powerful thing. Well, Rachel, we're going to throw over to you, and you're going to take us to one more song, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good on you. Thanks.
Going to sing